Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be giving you my spoiler review of the brand new Transformers War for Cybertron trilogy, Chapter 3, Kingdom. At long last, the War for Cybertron trilogy has concluded, and I'll be completely honest and say that this chapter actually turned out so much better than I could have imagined. Now, of course, it's not without its flaws. All of the flaws that we've seen in Earthrise and Siege still retained, but story-wise, as well as action-wise, this was by far the best. Now, I have written down a bunch of notes here, so I'm just going to really sound off in this particular video, and be sure to engage with me down in the comment section below, as I would absolutely love to know on what you guys thought of this particular chapter, and where do you think Hasbro are going to take us for the next trilogy. I have some ideas, and that end credit scene definitely did suggest something that I believe has been rumoured for quite some time now. So I actually went into this particular chapter with no expectations at all, and I actually didn't watch any of the trailers either. So in regards to hype for this particular chapter, I was actually at an all-time low. Unlike Earthrise and Siege, where I was actually quite excited to watch them, I didn't really count down the days here for Kingdom at all, which ultimately I actually think really helped. Going into the show with low expectations and then actually being, not, I wouldn't say blown away, but definitely being impressed really did help. Now, Kingdom opens where Earthrise left off. The Ark and the Nemesis are crash landing on what appears to be a prehistoric Earth. A great action sequence, one of the best opening sequences we've seen from the War for Cybertron trilogy so far. It really was excellent, especially when the Nemesis was falling and you had Megatron grappling onto his ship. It was so awesome. Some of the good points about the show was the fact that we actually had Beast Wars characters in this. Now, I was a little skeptical on how they were going to introduce them, whether or not it would bloat the story, but nope, it worked so well. And to see the Beast Wars characters actually integrate and mix with the Autobots and Decepticons, it was just fantastic. There were two combinations in particular, which I'll discuss later on in the video, which, wow, what a pairing they made. Now, to be completely honest with you, I didn't really have any issues with any of the Beast characters at all. I was a little let down not to see Waspinator thrown in the mix, just as he was one of the best characters to come out of the original 90s series, and it would have been excellent to actually have gotten his character here in this particular chapter. But regardless, I'm really hoping that perhaps we can see him in whatever the next trilogy shall be. Now, the voice acting, of course, was an issue with Earthrise and Siege, and yes, it's still an issue here. Most noticeably would be Beast Wars Megatron. He sounds nothing like David Kay's awesome, iconic performance in the original 90s series. But to be fair, after the series actually picked up, it wasn't something that I necessarily paid all that much attention to. I did think the voice acting was a little generic, but to be honest with you, it certainly wasn't the worst that we've gotten in the series so far. And there are two characters in particular from the Beast Wars lineup that I absolutely loved, and they were Dinobot and Black Arachnia. Black Arachnia in particular, my goodness, I thought she was fantastic, by far the most enjoyable and entertaining character on the show. She just had so much depth, and I absolutely loved it when she teamed up with Air Razor. That was one of the best sequences and some of the best scenes that we've actually gotten in the show so far, so she was awesome. And Dinobot, well, he was terrific in Beast Wars, and he was pretty decent here in Kingdom. He, of course, much like his original Beast Wars counterpart, does sacrifice himself for the greater good. He's aligned with the Predacons throughout most of the series, and then in the seconds before his death, he asks Optimus Primal whether or not he would have accepted him as a Maximal, and of course he would have, and that was just such an awesome sequence. He does in fact actually retrieve the Matrix of Leadership, which was taken from Prime towards the end of Earthrise, and that created for one of the best action sequences I personally have seen from the trilogy so far. Just seeing Dinobot take on both Beast Wars Megatron as well as the G1 Megatron. He continuously transformed into Raptor mode as well as, of course, into Robot mode, and that's something I also really loved. I loved how the Beast characters utilised their alt forms as well as their actual robot forms. That was excellent, and something that we haven't really seen all that much with the actual G1 inspired characters, so that was super cool. We see Primal transform quite a lot in the show, which was cool, and on the topic of Primal, I actually thought he was handled really nicely. Now, a concept and a plot point which I absolutely loved was the fact that the Maximals and the Predacons are in fact in the future of the present Autobot and Decepticons. That was just so cool. So they already know what's happened to Optimus Prime, and that is that he's turned into Nemesis Prime. When Primal and Optimus Prime actually meet, Primal does mistaken Optimus Prime for Nemesis, as of course that's who he has become in the timeline of the Maximals and the Predacons, and I just thought that was such an awesome concept. And the Maximal and Predacons version of Megatron is in fact Galvatron, which was also really cool. The Galvatron and Nemesis Prime sequences too were some of the best out of the show, and I'm really excited to see where they go next. In regards to animation and visual aesthetic, it was by far the best that we've seen so far. Oh my goodness, the animation is beautiful. If they could really just nail the voice acting, it would be a perfect show, and of course tighten up some of the plot threads. It would be so cool. I think it's probably one of the best looking animated shows currently out there, and I really hope in the next trilogy they do keep this sort of artistic style that they've currently got, but of course with better voice acting and a better narrative. I also thought the plot of this particular chapter was so much better than the previous ones. In Earthrise and Siege, I've kind of forgotten what the actual main plot of those were, especially Earthrise. I could not tell you at all what that particular chapter did achieve, but here the main goal is of course to retrieve the Allspark that we lost towards towards the end of Siege in order to bring life back to Cybertron, and the Predacons and the Maximals are fighting over it. We've also got the Golden Disc thrown in there, the Matrix of Leadership being constantly taken from Optimus by Megatron. It was just a really cool plot. Of course, there were some loose ends, which hopefully will get tidied up in the next chapter, and there were some things that perhaps didn't make a whole lot of sense. Personally, I did not have no idea as to why the forest began glitching, especially for the Predacons and the Maximals. At first, I thought that maybe the Matrix of Leadership was trying to trick the Decepticons and Predacons, but then Optimus Primal started seeing illusions. Optimus Prime then saw Alpha Trion, which then turned out to be Dinobot. That was a little bit confusing, and to be fair, I wish in some ways they had actually left that out, as I had no idea why the forest began to disintegrate and then disappear and then all of a sudden magically reappear. But that's just a minor critique for this show, as honestly, this was definitely the best chapter that we've seen so far. And in regards to G1 characters, one character in particular that I didn't really care all that much about in Siege and Earthrise, that being Starscream. Oh my goodness, did he shine in this particular chapter, especially when he got a hold of the Golden Disc and essentially saw the future of the Autobots, the Predacons, the Maximals, and the Decepticons. It was so awesome. Starscream knows that Unicron is coming, and my goodness, did it leave on a really cool cliffhanger. I cannot wait to see where the next chapter goes. So, to cut a long story short, the Autobots, Decepticons, Maximals, and Predacons essentially all team up together towards the final battle, and it's really those final 2 episodes where the pace really begins to pick up. If they had kept that same pace throughout the rest of the trilogy, it would have been excellent, but they all begin to team up in order to revive Cybertron by actually using the Allspark, and they're essentially going against Nemesis Prime and Galvatron, who want to use the Allspark in order to destroy Unicron, as those particular characters in that timeline are in fact slaves of Unicron. And I cannot wait to see, as I mentioned, what the next trilogy has got in store for us. Unicron is definitely going to be causing some problems, and I really can't wait to see the actual demise of the G1 Megatron, as we haven't as of yet seen that. We've seen Galvatron, but we haven't seen how he actually becomes Galvatron. So here's hoping that maybe in the future we will in fact get a Unicron trilogy. That is definitely what I believe at least was hinted at towards the end of Kingdom, and it's something I cannot wait to see. I also once again loved how the Beast Wars characters and the Autobots and Decepticons were all together. It was just so awesome. If anything, it actually made me incredibly excited for the upcoming live-action Transformers Rise of the Beasts, as if it was done and pulled off that well for the Netflix series, which to be fair has been pretty mediocre, then on live action I'm pretty certain that it can't go that wrong, surely. Now, turning to some critiques, as mentioned beforehand, the voice acting, I'm not going to dwell on that too much. It's something that we've known about since Earthrise and Siege. It doesn't necessarily get that much better here. With Kingdom, with the exception of Black Arachnia and Dinobot, I thought they were really good in regards to their voice acting. Beast Wars Megatron, definitely not the best. Primal, definitely not the best, but actually not too bad, to be fair. I thought Tigatron was quite cool, although I did think that perhaps they should have swapped around Tigatron's voice with Dinobot, as Tigatron was certainly very husky, and I just thought that would better suit Dinobot, but definitely, you know, not too bad. I didn't necessarily like the whole plot point of the Ark transforming. To me, it was just sort of thrown in there because the Titan class toy did it. It didn't really make a whole lot of sense, to be fair, and it didn't necessarily add all that much to the plot. I believe he punches the Nemesis. I don't believe that it damages it beyond repair or anything, so that was definitely something that I was a little confused about. As mentioned, the disintegrating forest, I didn't really get a great sense of what was going on, but definitely a really interesting plot, something that I cannot wait to see where they pick up with in the next trilogy, especially in regards to the whole future aspect of Galvatron and Nemesis Prime teaming up, and then you've got the Maximals and the Predacons that are in the same timeline as Nemesis Prime and Galvatron, but then you've got the Autobots and the Decepticons with the G1 Megatron still alive, stuck in the present day. So that's going to be really interesting to see as to where they take off from the next trilogy, which I really am hoping is a Unicron trilogy, as we do see Unicron in the end chapter. So overall, definitely a really pleasant chapter, by far the most enjoyable chapter out of all 3 so far, and I would definitely recommend for any of you that are a Transformers fan to check it out, as I actually thought it was pretty awesome. Now, very quickly going through some of the characters that were missing that I was really hoping would make an appearance, judging by the toys. We don't get Waspinator, which was a real shame. We don't see Rodimus Prime, and sadly we don't get Cyclonus, which once again was a shame. And Scorponok is actually thrown in there, the Beast Wars Scorponok, but he's more of a henchman, and then at one part of the series there's loads of different versions of Scorponok. He's almost like the Beast Wars version of the Refractor. There's multiple clones of them, but I definitely had a good time watching it. Would I rewatch it? Definitely. Out of all 3, that would be the one that I find most rewatchable, mainly because I thought the plot was so much more interesting, and it was just so cool to see the G1 and Beast Wars characters mix. So that just about wraps up my review. I think it was really good fun. Cannot wait to see where they take the show next. Hopefully the writing and the storytelling does progress a little better, as it wasn't 100% perfect here, and I would just absolutely love for them to improve on the voice acting. If they could get Peter Cullen, Frank Welker, Gary Chalk, and David Kay, oh my goodness, it would be so awesome. But I'd love to know down in the comment section below what you guys thought of this particular chapter. Will you be watching it? If you have watched it already, if you've been watched it, please let me know down in the comment section below. What did you think? Do you agree with my thoughts? Do you think that perhaps I'm being a little too forgiving for the show? I just think that it was definitely an improvement when in comparison to Earthrise and Siege, and I really think that's something that needs to be said, as the other chapters in particular really did receive quite a lot of negativity, and I think that you should give credit where it's due and state that this really was, at least to me, an improvement. I thank you all for watching this review, and until my next review, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.